All right, so Jekyll. About 2 months ago, we decided to rewrite the Flatterline blog, which Flatterline is my company. And before we were on WordPress, and that was fine for a while. That worked for us. But when we decided to do this rewrite, we said, do we want to stick with WordPress? You know, is it too much? Is it stuff we don't necessarily care about? Is it PHP? And so after asking all those questions, we said, what are the alternatives? And so there are a few Ruby-based options out there, like, shoot, I can't remember the names of them now. You used one just recently. What was it? Refinery, CMS. And Radiant. And there was one I used a long time ago that nobody uses anymore and has kind of fallen to the wayside. But we found Jekyll, and what Jekyll is it's a static site generator. So it's not WordPress. It's not going to dynamically create pages, which can be a good thing, but you also have to know the limitations as well of what that's going to give you. It's Ruby-based. It also has liquid tags so that you can do replacement when you're generating. You can access quite a few different things on the page in those Ruby tags, and then there are built-in filters for Jekyll, and you get the basic liquid filters and tags. YAML is used also in Jekyll for both configuration and global configuration and page configuration. So together, combined, I think those are all awesome. It's pretty basic how it works. It has a pretty simple directory structure. Anything with an underscore in front of the directory is meant to be invisible to Jekyll in terms of what gets generated to the site. So this is usually where you're going to put the unrendered stuff or any YAML data files or anything that you don't want to actually be displayed in your site, but that's going to be used during the generation phase. Takes all those things, pulls them together, applies a template, so there's like a layouts directory that you can add as many of these things as you want, specify which ones you want to use for different pages, different posts. Converts any markdown or text style that you may have, and that's all built in. Converts it to HTML, then runs the liquid converters, and all of that gives you your static HTML pages. So it dumps all that into a directory, and that directory is then ready for deployment. One of the things I really like about Jekyll is that it's highly configurable, like right out of the box with the things that I wanted from a blogging or content management system, but not with all the overhead like what WordPress gives you. So some of the things that you have are like global configuration options, things like pagination, which you can specify number of items to show per page in the global configuration, and it takes effect on the site. There's also a way in the global configuration to exclude certain files. Maybe they don't follow the same format, like the underscore file naming convention. You'd be able to exclude those from actually getting generated into the generated site directory. Then you have the per page and post configurations, like I talked about, and that's called YAML front matter. And that's just a little chunk of YAML that sits on the top of every page or post. And you can essentially put whatever you want in there, but there are some basic things that Jekyll uses automatically, like the layout. So in that YAML, you might specify layout default, layout post, layout page, whatever it happens to be. Or you can add your own key value pairs, and you can use those however you want. So one of the uses that we used it for was page metadata, because he's really into SEO stuff. So he said, you need to have, a title, a unique title for each page and post. You need to be specifying the description. You need an excerpt. And so we wrote the excerpt all in that YAML front matter. And then when we had the layout for like a post or the index page for a post, we were able to actually grab the data from the YAML and output it however we want. And the nice thing about all of this is that it's Ruby. So if you want to do something different, do it. And it's really easy to extend. It's really easy to modify. So just like any other Ruby, if you find that there's something in Jekyll you don't like the way it does it, just open up the class and modify a method or override a method. So some of the built-in things that are really nice are pagination, a custom permalink structure, which again, if you're worried about SEO, that's something that you want to pay attention to make sure that you're outputting things that are human and robot readable, that are going to affect your ranking, keywords that you're going for. It's pretty cool that they have related post extraction in there as well. That's one of the global configuration options. It's called LSI. And so if you set that to true, you will get I think it's page.related posts that you can use when you're, say like on the post layout at the bottom, you might loop through that and output the related posts, the 5 related posts or something like that. You can limit it. And the way that works is it goes through the content and it analyzes the content. But there's one caveat there. If you have a lot of posts, you definitely want to use the GSL library, so brew install GSL, because otherwise it gets really, really slow. When it's trying to analyze all that content and find relations based on the data that's in there, it can get really, really slow. But that's pretty easy to set up. Syntax highlighting, because it was built by Preston-Werner of GitHub, they deal with code. So one of the things that was very important to them was like built-in syntax highlighting. And they use this for their own blogs as well, their own personal blogs, as well as the GitHub pages. And then, of course, I talked about this before, Markdown text-style conversion. So if you prefer to write in that HTML abstraction, go for it. It's going to generate it for you. So, all of those great things, plus a plugin architecture. And this is where Jekyll starts to get really interesting, is that there are a lot of people writing plugins for it right now. And since it's not new, I think it's about 2 years old, but it's still in its infancy in terms of people using it, it being kind of more prolific on the web. So you've got some plugins that are coming out pretty recently that cover almost everything that you would want for either a site or a blog. So things like sitemaps. If you have a company, you can do like team page generation or portfolio generation if you're a freelancer or you're a web development company, let's say. And those are things that we used on our own blog that we found very useful. And if you want to write your own plugins, all you have to do is put them in the plugins directory, _plugins, and they're just Ruby files. But if, let's say you needed a custom generator, you wanted to, say like that team page generation, you had some YAML data about each person that's in your company, and you wanted to go through all of that and generate one overall team page and then a single page for each person. That's really, really easy to do by extending generator. So they have this all built in. The only thing you need is to implement the generate method and have it do whatever it is that you want it to do. Say like read in all the YAML files and go through each one. Super easy. Same thing with custom liquid tags. If you want more than what's available through Jekyll or just through Liquid in general, you can extend liquid tag as well, define the render method, and register the tag so it's available for use on your pages. So this one, for instance, If you had a liquid tag, you would say render time and then pass it in whatever arguments it is that you needed. So deployment is really easy. Heroku is what we use for our deployment. We're just on the free instance. And that works very well for us, especially because it's free. But GitHub pages, you can actually deploy directly from your GitHub repository. You can set that all up through like the GitHub configuration or admin section, where they allow you to set up a CNAME record so you can actually have your own domain name, but it's like the Jekyll site in the GitHub repo that's being served up. It's pretty cool. There are some people that have deployed directly to Amazon S3 because it's all static. You're just serving up static pages. So why not? That's probably, I mean, if you have a site that's getting hit a lot, that might be your best bet in terms of like infinite scalability. And then of course, you know, anywhere that can serve static pages. I like Heroku, personally. So I got asked this question by Ralph. What about blog comments? You know, there's no such thing in Jekyll. That's not what it's for. You'll see a lot of the people that have Jekyll blogs don't have comments, or they just embed one of these comment, like JavaScript commenting systems. Discuss, intense debate, Facebook comments. But one caveat here is if you're thinking about SEO and comments and links and how that content affects your page, you might want to do some research on which of those is going to best support it. I think right now Google is indexing Facebook comments, but I'm not sure about the others. And then there's the inevitable question of like, what if I need more than just something that's static? What if I need something that's dynamic as well? And that's where Sinatra comes in really handy. For instance, let's say you had your company site, and it's great that it's all static, but you need a contact form as well. And so there are a couple options that you could do. I mean, you could embed a form from some third-party site that emailed you or whatever, like Wufoo forms or something. Or you could simply deploy a Sinatra application along with your static site to Heroku, and that Sinatra app could accept a post from your contact form and do whatever it is that you need it to do. Store it somewhere, say you store it in a Mongo database, or email it to you. We have it emailing to us. So that was one use that we used it for. And then the workflow is something that I really liked because whenever I would go into WordPress, it changed up the way I did things because they had their own way of doing it. And it wasn't really for developers. Jekyll is for developers. So if you're used to doing like a pull from the repository, make a change, commit it, push it up, I mean, that's how you would essentially be blogging here, or how you'd be changing content on your site or adding content to your site, is just exactly like you would with a normal repository. We use Foreman. Is anyone familiar with Foreman? No. So Foreman is a way of running multiple instances at a time locally. That's what it's made for. So with this, for the Flatterline site, we have Jekyll, and so we need to generate the static files for Jekyll, and they have an executable that you can run that watches your directories, and then it regenerates every time there's a change. So that's one of the things that we run under Foreman. Another one that we run is Compass. There's a Compass watcher. Is anyone familiar with Compass? No. So Compass is like, you heard of SCSS, SAS, any of those like CSS abstractions? Compass is the same thing. It has a watcher, watches for changes to those files and generates them to CSS. And then the last thing that we have is the Sinatra application. So with Foreman, what it expects is Procfile. That just sits in the root of your directory. And the Procfile specifies the name and command that you want for each instance that you want to run, whether that's, say, a Rails app plus some other things, or like we have the Sinatra Jekyll compass triumvirate. So Foreman, if you don't know about it, check it out. It's great for local development. Heroku is also Procfile aware. So if you have a Procfile locally that you're using with Foreman and you deploy to Heroku, it's going to pick that up and it's going to create or run those commands that you have in that Procfile.
How is that different than just starting Rails twice with a different port?
Well, this isn't Rails, but you, in that Procfile, if you needed, say, like 2 versions of Rails, you could say Web 1, Web 2, and kick it off with the different port numbers. But you just need to say Foreman start in order to start everything that you have. So you've probably run into this too, like you have Solar running or something like that, where you've got this like search index, and you'll have like multiple windows open where you've got your Solar server started and you've got your Rails app started, and maybe you have a couple other services that work in conjunction with that. This is an easy way for you to start all of those things at once, and it combines all the log file output as well, and instruments it with the name of the process, so you can see like what's happening across all the processes at once. It's pretty nice. I'd encourage you to check it out. So, in this case right here, creating a new post under the _post directory, you'll notice like the format of a post is date followed by a name, and that's something that's configurable in Jekyll. But in general, it's going to create a directory for each part of the date. So you'd have 2011, and then under that would be December, and under that would be the 20th. And then inside of that would be a Jekyll blogging presentation at rubyaz.html once it was generated. So on your site, when someone navigates to that, that would be the structure of the URL as defined in the configuration options. Add your content to the file, add it to Git, commit it, push it, and push it to Heroku. And this fits in really well with the way that I normally work, just on Rails apps or Ruby apps in general. And I've had, that sounds weird, but I've actually had fun inside of a blogging engine, So a couple of gotchas that we found. The YAML front matter is like an indicator that it's a special file and that something needs to be done by Jekyll to that file. If you don't have it in there, then it can get really frustrating because you're like, why isn't this working? So if you don't have the YAML at the front, even if it's just empty YAML, like the three dashes, just make sure that you know that it's not going to process it in a special way if you don't have that there. The pagination also, we tried to use Markdown for a lot of the files, and that did not work. It does not like Markdown or text style when you're dealing with pagination. It will only work with HTML files. We're not talking about the generated files, we're talking about the actual like pre-generated files need to be HTML to use for pagination. So like the index of the blog would need to be HTML if you have pagination on there. And then one of the things I found kind of bizarre coming from the Rails world is that there was no generator that I could run when I installed Jekyll that would like create a base project for me. That was really bizarre. So I'm so used to just going in and saying like Rails new. So those are a couple things that we found that were kind of weird. And then a few stats as of today. There are about 400 sites on the Jekyll wiki documented that are using Jekyll right now to generate their site. And most of those also link to their source. So it's kind of like, I don't know, this weird movement amongst Jekyll people that they should just open source their blog as well. So we have ours out there also, if you ever want to take a look at it. And it's a great resource for how somebody did something on their site, is that you can just go to this wiki sites, find the source link to somebody's site, go to it, peruse the source on GitHub, and figure out how they did it. Then there are around 50 plugins right now, and it's growing. Just from the time that we started working with it, I think there have been 8 new plugins added, and a couple of those are ones that we wrote as we went through the process of converting over. On the GitHub repo itself, there are about 4,500 people watching the repo, which is pretty good, and that's quite a few people. So I'd imagine that the 400 documented sites is actually lower than the number of people that are actually using it or have used it for something. And then there are about 700 forks of it as well. So people are taking it, they're modifying it, and contributing back those changes to Jekyll, which is, of course, great for open source projects. So the final question is, how do you get started? And it's simple. Just gem install Jekyll. So thanks for listening to me as I rambled on about Jekyll. And if you have any questions.
It looks pretty fast, right? So, I mean, if it's all static files, I would imagine the site's kind of just really pretty responsive.
It is. Have you guys heard of a site called blitz.io?
Yeah. It's the volume tester. It throws a lot of load.
Yeah, so it mimics like a number of users hitting your site, and you can configure it both based on time and number of users. So just out of curiosity, while we were at Coffee and Code a couple weeks ago, we tried it out on the Flatterline site, and we did 0 to 250 users in 10 seconds, sustaining 250 for the rest of a minute. And the average page load time was 13 milliseconds. So very, very fast. Not just like for our own, like, hey, that's fast, but if you pay attention to like what Google says about indexing and SEO and the relevancy of your site, page speed is becoming more and more of a factor in that as well. So this also helps, even though you may not actually realize it. If you deploy something with Jekyll, this static generated site, you're going to get indexed faster by search engines, and they're going to increase your ranking based on how fast your site is. It's another thing to keep in mind.
Not to mention users, you know. I mean,
Yeah, and of course it decreases frustration, people having to wait for your site.
Can you just show some code? Because I'm not really understanding how it's all kind of like set up. It's just like static files that
Absolutely.
have code
So,
in them, and then it regenerates them to the...
This is the link to our repository here. And so this is, you guys can go look at this too if you want at any time. You can see the underscored. Wow. Is that better?
Uh-huh.
You can see the underscored directories there, right? Includes are like additional files that you may think of them as partials from Rails. There are other files that contain common code or snippets of code that you may want to pull into multiple different pages or layouts. And you can do that from anywhere. Layouts, of course, we have a bunch of different layouts for the different pages that we have, and those are just all HTML files. So this is like the base one, right? You can see that there are some liquid tags in there for the content.
Is that like a yield?
Yeah, that is exactly like a yield. This is an include right here, and that automatically looks in that include directory for a file of that name.
That makes sense.
Plugins. These are all the Ruby files. So this is one that we wrote for creating a portfolio index and then a portfolio page for each project. And the way this works is that there's a projects directory that's just a bunch of YAML files of projects. And if you were to go into one, it just looks like YAML. Has a description, some endorsements or whatever, and we just defined this ourselves, and that's how flexible it is. You can just pretty much do whatever you want. So we defined, like, what are the things that we want to know about a project we worked on in the past. When the portfolio generator is run, it reads in all these files, extracts the relevant information, creates pages from that information, and then uses a layout as specified in here to insert the generated page of that layout.
Do they call themselves more so for blogging or for? Cause it seems like it's just kind of for static sites. Is that?
It is definitely for blogging. Yes. The site stuff is like the portfolio and the team page, which you would normally find on a company website, let's say. Those are things that we had to add. We had to create those ourselves because they're not there. So their original intent was for blogging, yes.
Can you set up like authors pretty easily and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things in this port team plugin that we did, was that you have not only the team index, which is a page, but you also have a person, which is a page, right? And then finally, this is the generator to generate those two, or the team page and then each member of the team individually.
So would you?
But then we added this thing called an author tag, which is a liquid tag. Uses the same information from the team, but it creates like the author bio that you might see at the bottom of a blog post or in a sidebar or something like that if you have multiple authors.
So you're just sticking like their tag on that template.
Yeah, so it actually it looks at, when we talked about that YAML front matter, this looks for an author key and then grabs the author names from that and uses them. So you can see like team, same thing, bunch of YAML files that get pulled in. The site is where by default it dumps all the generated files. So this directory should be all generated HTML files, as well as the Sinatra other files that you haven't excluded. You probably noticed that there are a bunch of like non-underscored directories here. If it finds a directory like that and it's not specifically excluded, it just copies it into the site directory. But it will handle any markdown text style generation that needs to happen in those directories, but the directory itself becomes a new path, which is nice. What else? We use, gem file. Here's the Procfile that we were talking about. So we've named each of our processes, Web, Compass, and Jekyll. And that's how they actually appear in the log output. I could actually show you that too if you want. Is it? So if we do the form and start, you'll see that it starts each of those things that were specified in the Procfile. And now we have 3 processes with their process IDs there. They're telling you what they're doing, of course. You know, if you had separate windows, each one would be separately outputting what it's doing. And then now we have this Sinatra app on port 5000 that we could go hit if we wanted to. These little dots right here, that's the Jekyll generation happening.
Does it color code output for you like that?
I think I have that set up.
I think Foreman does that.
Does it?
I don't know if it's a thing you have to turn on. I can't remember.
And then the thing with Foreman is like once you're done, just Control C, and it sends the signal to stop all the processes that it started. You can have as many in there as you want. So if you have a very complex app that has, say, multiple services that need to all come up and work together, it's a great way to do it locally. Let's see. Anything else in here look crazy? Sinatra? You want to see Sinatra? So this is like a really basic single file Sinatra app. Then I think there are other ways that you can create Sinatra applications, say that like span multiple files, but this one was about 200 with white space. So not really large, and a lot of that is just redirects, say from our old blog to the new one, so we didn't want to lose any of the pages. So a lot of redirects in there. The Blitz IO stuff that we talked about, they give you a special key, and you have to return 42 when they hit with that. Here's the dynamic content stuff. We talked about, like, you have all of the site generated statically except one little piece, and that piece is the contact form. We need to be able to accept the post of that, barring that we go to some outside third-party service for forms. And so with Sinatra, you just specify like what type is it, get, post.
Is this the old site?
No, this is the new one. Why?
Well, so you're serving the static files through Sinatra?
Yes. Yeah, there's one rule for that in Sinatra.
Would you even need to do that? Would Nginx or whatever your web server just serve?
Yeah,
static?
if it's just using static files, yeah, if you're not using any Ruby processing.
Right, because we deployed on Heroku,
Yeah.
we needed to do this. I'm not sure if there's another way you could do it on Heroku, but we had to give it. Heroku tries to like keep all of the operation stuff away from you. So in order for us to be recognized as a deployable type of application, a Ruby app, Sinatra, we had to do this with Sinatra. If you had full control over, say, Nginx, then you could definitely set the _site directory as like, this is where I serve my content out of. And you wouldn't need to do any of the Sinatra stuff. It would work the same way with S3. You know, there's a way for you to put it into like, I don't know what it's called there, but like a public HTML directory, so that it gets served up. But yeah, I think that's just a Heroku thing.
Can you, like, when you render all the files, do you have to render the entire thing and then kind of like easily redeploy it? Or can you render like certain bits of it?
It renders the whole thing again. It actually wipes out the site directory and re-renders. So it's kind of funny sometimes, you know, you'll make just a small change to one file, and Foreman is watching, or the Jekyll process is running in the background watching through Foreman. And you'll go to check in, and you'll see like 25 files changed. You're like, what just happened? Like, I only changed this one file, but you happen to change like a layout or something. You know, change the footer in a layout. It affects every single page, so they all get regenerated. Sometimes too, and I think this is based on like last time generated, the related posts will update all of the post files, with new related posts. That kind of like changes them up.
So are you generating these files and committing them to Git before you like deploy it, or is it on the deploy that it pulls from Git and then generates on the fly?
You can deploy directly. You can push directly to GitHub if you want and bypass, or Heroku, and bypass GitHub if you want. That's possible because Heroku gives you a repository. So you just have to set that up as a remote for your Git repository locally. You cut GitHub out altogether. I prefer to go through GitHub because that's where you're going to get, people are going to be able to see your code, right? That's the social coding aspect of it. If I pushed it directly to Heroku, then nobody'd ever see it except me.
But when it pulls it, it's pulling the source and then compiling the source into the static files on Heroku?
I do it locally.
Okay.
So yeah, as I'm running Foreman, it's generating it the whole time. So when I'm ready to check in, I have all the freshly generated files.
It's not set up to do it on the server, really?
It's not.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's all locally. If you do the GitHub pages, then you can set up a GitHub post hook, I think is what it's called, to make sure that it's going to be served up by GitHub and not somewhere else. They have it. It's under their wiki on how to set it up for GitHub pages. And actually, GitHub Pages uses Jekyll. So GitHub itself, I'm pretty sure, is Jekyll aware. It'll know that you have a Jekyll directory.
So like if you have a Jekyll project and you're using a domain GitHub page, it'll like ignore all those directories and stuff, just like you're talking about here. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, you can not generate it locally or not check in that _site directory if you're going to serve directly from GitHub. Then you would push to a repository on GitHub, and you would have to set something up through them for that post hook. That post hook is what invokes the GitHub server side Jekyll generation for you. And then typically it's something like, yourname.github.com or something is the page that you would have. And that would also be the name of your repository, I think, is how that works. And then you can set up a CNAME for your domain to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'd have to probably look into it.
The wiki is actually pretty nice. Mojumbo is the GitHub user. But they have a pretty nice set of instructions here in terms of usage and configuration. The one thing that was a little bit weird was that they say, oh yeah, you should set up these directories. And you're like, okay, well what other directories are there? Like what else is available? And that was a little bit strange for me. But given all of the source that's available through these sites, you can see that almost everybody has their source available. You can figure out what people are doing or what best practices are pretty easily just by perusing some of them. Like this guy, he released Jekyll, so he probably knows what he's doing. Maybe.
How active is development on it? Was it just created and then it just kind of just done?
Last update was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, November. And it has 50 pull requests right now. So I think people are definitely, actually there's been a couple more forks since I looked at it earlier. But I think people are using it, modifying it. I'm not sure how quickly they're pulling in people's changes. It's probably pretty sporadic. I think this guy's a little bit busy, keeping GitHub running and whatnot.
I could see it being, because I bet you they're trying to keep it like really simple, and I can imagine people being like, oh, but you should add all this extra stuff.
Oh, yeah,
And
totally.
then they're like, yeah, we don't really want to be that, just use Rails for something like that. Or whatever.
I think they're filtering it through what does GitHub Pages need, and if GitHub Pages doesn't need that, then they're going to wait until a lot of people request it. Or if it's such an easy change, like somebody has submitted an issue with a pull request, then they'll probably include it.
Do you know what Octopress is?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, so Octopress is kind of like a step above Jekyll. It's trying to create more like a WordPress type product on top of Jekyll. So it gives you a lot of default configuration already. I found out about it after I had already started with Jekyll. It's trying, I think, trying to be the WordPress of Jekyll.
Is that the CMS?
Sounds like. It's not quite there, but it's definitely more than just the bare bones Jekyll. They tried to pull out some of the commonalities, I think, that they were seeing amongst people's projects. What are the common plugins? A default layout, stuff like that. And that's actually on here too. Octopress. But it is really like a layer on top of Jekyll. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I think it really whittles down what you need. I always felt like WordPress was very big and had a lot of things that I never even looked at. If you look at the menu on the side for WordPress, I only go into about 2 of those ever. The rest of the stuff I never even touch. With this, I know exactly what has gone into my site, and if I ever need to change anything, it's as simple as writing some Ruby.
So I have a question that's kind of related. It makes me think about this, but I don't know if it would really have anything to do with this project. But for like a Rails app, does anybody know, and maybe you just have to do caching and stuff, but how, are there any gems or anything that you can kind of do the same thing where you kind of have a CMS and then based off of all the content sort of generate a bunch of static files, and then whenever you have users updating content in the database, you just rerun all the files and spit them out or something?
Yeah, I think you would just do that through caching.
Because I think like Refinery and Radiant, they're not static, right? I think they're
They have caching built into them.
Do they?
In production, it automatically caches every request. But I mean, Rails has caching built into it.
Yeah.
Full-page caching, private caching.
Yeah, I've never.
Caching's easy, but validating of the cache is hard. So like if you have a page that has like user login and their name appears after they log in, and you have like comments that are being generated. Like that's like, you have like 10 different things which all can invalidate that page. And you gotta like think about all that. It's drives you crazy when you refresh the page, it's not doing it.
Can you configure stuff like that in Rails caching? For like what pieces?
But you have to use fragment caching for that.
And then that's part of Rails.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the asset pipeline is supposed to do more like the imaging caching, right? I think there's like an improved cache part of asset pipeline.
Yeah, I've never looked into it. Or is the Rails documentation probably? For
The caching?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Rails, the guides that we get Rails at work,
Yeah.
has a few pages in there.
Yeah. And the Rails guides have gotten a lot better in the last couple of releases. Any other questions? Is anybody looking to like create their new site in 2012? Yeah? A little Jekyll? Maybe some Octopress or something? Might be interesting.
Octopress? I'm just curious, anyone's had good or bad experiences with it?
Haven't used it. I mean, it is Jekyll as the base plus some like common things, common plugins, themes. Gives you somewhere to start, essentially. What it seems like to me. But yeah, I think in 2012 I'm probably going to redo my personal blog as well. I might check out Octopress or do a Jekyll one again. Seems to make sense for the way that I work.
So you thought this was less work than just having a WordPress installed for your blog?
No, I felt it was much more fun,
Right.
for sure. WordPress is definitely easy because you can get a lot of like one-click installers on various hosting services. But I did want to do something that was Ruby-based, and I've been really impressed with what Jekyll does, and especially how fast it is once it's all generated, and easy to use. And I didn't realize it at the time, but as I started using it more, just thinking of, that's why I included that slide about the workflow. This is just like that workflow. That's what I do day to day on my regular Ruby work. And to have to switch gears and like do something else on WordPress, it sucks. But now I can just treat it like any other project, add some new stuff to it, push it to Heroku. It's good.
Plus, he
I guess
thought
so.
it was a little hypocritical, you know,
Yeah.
running a PHP.
I guess I'm different though, because like on my blog, mine's in WordPress for disclosure, but like I don't want to look at code. I just want to write a stupid blog post. And so I just give me a WYSIWYG editor that I can just write some code in. Not code, but if I'm writing about code,
Right.
you know, and then done. So I don't want to have to deploy and all that crap.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Your site is very responsive. When you get a blog, it's snappy.
Yeah, we could. This is the site that we were talking about earlier. If you guys are ever looking to do any kind of like performance testing of any site, you can go here. They have a free version. It gets you up to 250 users in 1 minute worth of requests. But if you pay, you know, you can get something like 1 million users. So we can drop in the last rush, that's what they call them, so you're blitzing. Some sort of sports thing, not really up on that.
What country's IO?
Indian Ocean? It's the new .com for hackers.
So there's the results, right? Oh, you guys see that? It's a little bit dark. I don't know if I can lighten that any. The line right here shows number of users increasing. So it's, you know, 0 to 250 in 10 seconds. And then it sustains at 250 users for the rest of the minute. And then your average response time. And then there's the average up there. 13 milliseconds. That was just hitting the front page. But if you guys ever need to do any like simple, quick performance testing, this is a good option. At least to see like, does it fall down even with 250 users hitting it all at once. There's a guy, Mark Chung. Anybody know him? Yeah. His personal page, I wouldn't really call it a blog. This is just a single page, markchung.com, is also on Jekyll. And He had tried running this against something else he was doing. I can't remember what it was. It was WordPress. And it just fell down. It was not as responsive.
What did you say is WordPress?
I think it was WordPress, yeah, that he was testing against. But this is even with, you know, the free Heroku instance. You know, it's not a powerful machine. It's just a very, very basic server. Very basic. And it's, and like you had pointed out, it's filtering everything through Sinatra as well on Heroku. So yeah, blitz.io. Take a look. Anything else? Any other questions or comments?